Qantas planes are back in the air tonight, but there are some curious questions around exactly what transpired between the federal government and the national carrier. The Federal Transport Minister, Anthony Albanese, felt compelled to give the Parliament a rundown today of what he says Qantas advised the government in the lead up to Saturday's grounding. He felt the need to do so because his account differs to that of Qantas CEO Alan Joyce. Qantas now has the major job of placating angry passengers. Although it did have some good news today, its share price was up 4%. Here's National Affairs correspondent Heather Hewitt.
Early this morning, we moved to get the Qantas fleet back into operation. And we're trying to do this as soon as possible.
I wanted to get this dispute resolved, and I have done so.
Qantas planes may be up in the air again, but in the nation's normally busiest airports of Melbourne and Sydney this afternoon, it was hardly business as usual, and passengers, by and large, remained deeply disgruntled.
It's ruined my time in Australia, probably my one and only chance of coming to Australia, and just the past 2 days, completely ruined.
They could have done something before this, couldn't they? I mean, shocking thing, I think.
Ringing here, ringing there and trying to find out. They give you a number, but the number didn't work. Oh, God. I tell you, it was a terrible day yesterday.
Again, I want to apologise to our customers.
Qantas owes these passengers big time. Qantas was prepared to lose $20 million a day by closing down Qantas. They need to use a few days of that to spread around some free tickets after the anger has subsided.
As debate now rages over who was at fault in this dispute that grounded Australia's flagship airline and had the industrial umpire sitting into the early hours of this morning to try to break the impasse, one thing is clear. The anger isn't about to subside in a hurry. The Qantas brand is damaged, and so is Australian tourism.
I think it's fair to say 2011 will go down as one of the hardest and most traumatic years for the tourism industry.
There used to be a big emotional attachment to the Qantas brand. I think a lot of that is gone. People go on price these days and reliability. And by closing down Qantas, that's about the worst thing you can do in terms of reliability.
It's our estimate just in the last week we've had an impact of over $150 million through lost opportunities and people being stranded from the dispute.
As Qantas and the unions are now forced into a 3-week period of conciliation, and if that fails, arbitration by Fair Work Australia, what's central to the deep-seated anger at the highest levels of government are claims by CEO Chief Alan Joyce that he gave advance warning he was about to ground the airline.
Had you ever suggested to a minister, any minister, that grounding the airline was the possible option that would trigger an enterprise?
Yes, on multiple occasions I said that was a possibility.
That you would have to ground the fleet?
I said on multiple occasions we could get to a stage where we'd have to ground the airline. That's how bad this was, and that was made very clear.
This morning, after Mr Joyce gave an interview with Fran Kelly, I rang Mr Joyce and informed him that I would be making public the fact that on no occasion had Qantas ever raised the issue of a lockout of its workforce.
Order!
By mid-morning at a news conference, Alan Joyce wasn't quite so specific, though still sticking to his guns.
We made it very clear with various ministers that our forward bookings were collapsing. We made it very clear with various ministers that our operation was becoming more and more unreliable.
Did the government play this the right way?
I suspect that they failed to read the signs accurately. I think Alan Joyce has been hinting for many months that this is the crunch year, the crunch issue for Qantas. I think he probably didn't put it that bluntly to the government, but governments are there and ministers are there and politicians are there to read the breeze, and they didn't read it.
Would they have ever expected, though, that he would ground an airline?
I doubt it, but he did.
He did indeed, leaving the government and the unions gobsmacked at his audacity and suspicious about how long the strategy had been in the pipeline. 730 understands it was driven by Alan Joyce, he wasn't pushed by the board, and he had an unlikely team playing a background role. Former ACTU official and Ansett Airlines executive Ian Oldmeadow, former ALP pollster Rod Cameron, and former advisor to the Liberals Joe Hockey when he was Tourism Minister Olivia Wirth, now a Qantas spokeswoman.
And my message today is that all of our customers now can book with confidence with the airline going forward because all industrial action now ceases.
I think people have underestimated Alan Joyce's steel and determination, and that probably goes for the Qantas board as well.
But did Qantas really need to take such a radical step? Alan Joyce claims it did, and the decision was made on Saturday. That's despite weeks of drafting options and scenarios that included the grounding of the airline, as outlined in this document put to Fair Work Australia at the weekend. Insiders say when negotiations with the Transport Workers Union collapsed last Wednesday, that was the final straw. Whatever the timing of the Qantas decision, the government insists it acted properly by immediately going to the independent umpire.
The government on Saturday afternoon determined to intervene in this dispute because it was in the national interest to do so. Our swift intervention has ensured that industrial action is at an end. Our swift intervention has ensured that employees are back at work.
And they are, almost. But that doesn't mean the government's fury with Qantas is about to dissipate. Nor is Tony Abbott's insistence that the government could have used its own powers to swiftly end the grounding.
Why didn't she immediately terminate this dispute without reference to a tribunal, as she could have under her Fair Work Act, thereby avoiding so much damage to hundreds of thousands of Australians?
It's never been used before. It would have taken us into wholly new legal terrain. So we determined to use Section 424, which has been effective to get the result we wanted, which is to get planes back into the sky.
It was never going to be a government option to take the unprecedented step of using its own powers to intervene without going to the tribunal, though Qantas management did think it might be a possibility when it first grounded the airline. What matters now is whether Qantas's huge gamble was worth it.
We're just hoping as the peak season comes up for Christmas that we get some clear air and we actually get people booking holidays and enjoying the December and January period.
But winning back public trust may take a lot longer than that.
Heather Ewart reporting, and for the second day in a row, Qantas CEO Alan Joyce agreed to come on 7:30 for an interview and then cancelled. No explanation was offered. So unfortunately, I can't ask him about the contradictions between his account and Anthony Albanese's account of the conversations in the weeks before the shutdown.